Second, it would seem appropriate, Sir Bernard, although I know you're here to take Londoners' calls, and we will in just a moment, if I could ask you for a sort of brief overview of where you think the Met is at the moment, with another day of headlines questioning the relationship between us and the police and asking exactly what's going on, Sir Bernard.
Well, first of all, Nick, I think just to set things in context, we said a few things publicly yesterday, but just to remind people who may have got a little lost in the story, yesterday there was a programme on dispatches. I have to say I haven't seen the full programme yet. I've seen bits of it like everybody else has, and I couldn't see it last night. But we had been warned in the run-up to that about some of the allegations in it. And that programme, and a book that's published today, is an inquiry.
That's on the cover of the book, isn't it?
That's right,
yep.
By an inquiry by a journalist into the SDS, the Special Demonstration Squad. It actually changed its name in 1997. It was created in 1968, and it was disbanded in 2008. So this squad spanned 40 years. And there's been some serious allegations made, and I've said that in some of them I'm particularly shocked. And others have said how shocking they are. And the biggest one, I think, that has been mentioned is obviously the targeting of the alleged targeting of the Lawrence family and Dwayne Brooks during the time that they were campaigning for justice for their son Stephen, who'd been murdered back in 1993. And so that's broadly the allegation. But as people will know, as they've seen over the weekend, there are other parts to that allegation. That, for example, undercover officers had relationships with women who were part of the operation, that children were born as a result of that. There are allegations, excuse me, I've got a bit of a throat thing at the moment.
Have we got you? I trust we've got you.
Yeah, it's all right. They have got me water. It's my problem, not the water's.
Well, you have a swig of water. Just to remind you, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe is to take your calls, and we're going to be coming to those calls in just a second. Just to come back on that, I mean, I have to put it to you, Sir Bernard, you say you haven't seen all of the documentary. Why not?
Well, just because it was played out last night, we weren't given a pre-look at it. Yeah. And I just wasn't physically possible for me to look at it last night. But
you have Sky Plus or something?
Well, not at the time I got back home, I didn't. So my point is we have had people looking at it. We have had a briefing on what was in it. And my briefing last night was that there was nothing...
I mean, I have to say, if it was about my radio show, I'd have got up an hour earlier and watched it, Commissioner.
Well, obviously you're entitled to your view, Nick, and I will be looking at it as soon as I can this morning. Right. But we've had an awful lot of information about what is in that programme. Okay. And in fact, I have to say that everything that was in the programme broadly we expected. So all my comments are valid. Right. The comments I made yesterday, and I believe the comments are made today. But I want to be sure that I've seen the programme, and I was being open with you that as yet I haven't.
How much of a crisis have we got?
I can also tell you that I haven't read the book. Because the book is published today. We were given a pre-look quite late yesterday, and I haven't read that book either. And of course, we'll need to look at both things to see exactly what the claims are. And of course, we've talked to other witnesses in the investigation.
From what you've learnt so far, what shocks or worries you the most from what you've learnt so far, Sir Bernard?
Well, I suppose the first one is this claim that not only the Lawrence family were targeted, but other campaigning families were targeted. I think that's a very serious allegation. And if true, as I said yesterday, it would be a disgrace. If that was the reason they were targeted by undercover officers, then that would be a disgrace. Now, I have to make the case for undercover officers. They do a fantastic job for us, very courageous, and where they're deployed properly and according to the law, then they go out there and they target serious and organised crime. They target terrorists. This is a vital part of our armoury, but clearly this is a serious allegation, admittedly a historical one, and I can reassure people, as I just have in another radio programme, is that when I took over 2 years ago, I checked to see whether the Met's operations were running properly, and I had a review carried out. It was by an independent force too. And we were assured then, and during the last 2 years, if anything's gone wrong, it's down to me, but I'm sure we're running them properly now.
So any live Met operation at this time, you are confident does not involve police officers assuming the roles of dead children, sleeping with people, whatever it might be, trying to smear others. You can give me that assurance?
Yes. The only one you have to be very careful about is what relationships our undercover officers are forming day by day. Now, please God that they are doing it in a proper way. I can't be absolutely sure every minute of their day. But we select people well. We now train them far better than we did 20, 40 years ago.
So in 2033, wherever you might be, wherever I might be, we won't be turning back and thinking, oh, my God, that was even going on Sir Bernard's watch.
No, I don't. I believe not. And I'm confident of that. The only thing none of us can predict is how people's mores and morals change or views change in 20 years' time. But I think whatever your morals, whatever your mores are, we are looking back to the times of Stephen Lawrence's murder and saying that if the family was targeted, just to discredit them, if they were targeted to target the campaign, that can never be acceptable.
Let's go to more calls. Jenny is through to the Commissioner. Jenny, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning, Jenny.
There's been a lot of
Is that Jenny Jones?
It's Jenny Jones.
I know that voice.
Hello, Jenny.
There's been a lot of reviews and investigations into undercover policing, including the Met's own investigation that started in October 2011. But it took a whistleblower to make all this public. Why is that?
Well, first of all, what's been happening is that the investigation started, as you're probably aware, some time ago under Mick Creedon, and we did make announcements of Operation Hearn. And Operation Hearn is the overarching operation that Mick Creedon's running, one part of which has been discussed through these programmes. So that was made public. We have been briefing the Home Office and the Home Secretary about these issues, and in partly as a result of that, that led to the appointment of Mick Creedon, the Chief Constable of Derbyshire, to reassure people that in fact this was going to be an independent investigation, because some of the claims that both are contained in this book, we believe, and also some of the things we've already heard are quite shocking. So I think we can say it has been public, but not all the detail in the investigation is public. And to be fair, that's what happens with any of our investigation. We don't go out to the public and say, well, there's different legs of it. But we did publicise the fact that the investigation was taking place.
Jenny Jones?
I suppose that the real problem is, how can you be sure that you're getting to the truth if a whistleblower has to come forward? Are people not prepared to speak to internal investigations?
Well, sometimes that is true, Jenny, as you know. People aren't always prepared to speak, and for various motivations, people will talk to a journalist rather than they will talk to a police officer. What I do know is that Mick Creedon, you've got a good detective. You've got an objective man who, if he finds bad things, will say it. He's not going to compromise his own integrity just to please anybody else like me or any of us. And thirdly, obviously, he's working his way through quite a lot of material. Like I said yesterday, this squad's run for 40 years, and it's done some very good things. In my impression is, from all the things I've heard about it, at its best, it's done some very good things. But the challenge is whether all the period it's been operating has it worked at the highest standards, and I think that's where the challenge is coming. Now, what Mick Creedon and his team is going to have to do is to talk to witnesses, like hopefully this undercover officer who's talked to The Guardian and has also talked to dispatches last night. We need him to talk to us to reassert what he's already said. We'll talk to other officers. Many of these people have now left the Met. I mean, it closed down in 2008, so many have gone. We're talking about an issue that's 20 years ago. Secondly, we've got to find the documents, and that's not been easy because, as you know, with your experience of the Met, we've stored them in different places, including different parts of the country, in salt mines or goodness knows wherever. And then they've got to look through computers. So I'm not being defensive about it, but just as an observation of fact, these things do take a while to talk to witnesses, and then finally to correlate what you know.
Quick response, Jenny. One-line response from you, Jenny, if you would.
I hope the report will be made public when it is finished. Thank you.
Can I just put to you, in the documentary that you've not had full sight of yet, Stephen Lawrence's father says that he thinks that we need a judge-led public inquiry into these allegations. Where do you stand on that, Sir Bernard?
Well, first of all, I hope that we can reassure Neville Lawrence and Mrs Lawrence and Dwayne Brooks and others that, in fact, what we're doing is independent. And the only thing...
It's Met officers, isn't it? I know they report up to the Commissioner of Derbyshire, but...
I accept that.
So it's Met investigating the Met.
I do, but I think there's 2 or 3 layers to the independence. I mean, first of all, Mick Creedon has put some of his own staff into the team at critical points, so that he's got the leaders in as well as some of the doers. Not a large number. I think the team overall is about 30-odd people, of which 20-odd are police officers. Secondly, he himself is overseeing this operation. Yes. Thirdly, we've asked the IPCC to supervise far more of it than they were already supervising. And the other part, which I don't think has really been too well understood because it's a bit more complicated by people, is that a QC called Mark Ellison was already and publicly carrying out an independent assessment of whether or not officers who provided information to them at first inquiry in any way had been corrupt and had all the information at the time been provided.
So what's it say about the Met with these 2 reviews going on already and possibly a third? What's it say about that?
Well, I suppose the first thing is, because your first question was should there be a public inquiry, all I'm saying is that I think there is an independence-led that we've got already.
But they don't swear on oath,
I think the only 2 things that I would say is that the public inquiry is possible. I don't think it's for me to call that. I think someone else has to say, they reassured by what I've already
How would you
described.
react?
But, well, I'd be content whichever way it went at the end of the day. I think it's.
So you have no problems with the judge, should they suddenly...
Well, let me just put 2 criteria in. If it was me making a decision, I would want to consider. Number one is if you do have a public inquiry, it can take a long time. And it's not always conclusive at the end of it. And secondly, if there is more wrongdoing discovered, it still has to come back to the police or to the IPCC to investigate and prosecute. A public inquiry can decide who did what, but if you want to get into a criminal prosecution or to a misconduct process, it still has to fall back to the police. So you might end up having 2 parallel things. So I'm content that, the investigation has to continue to establish the facts. And if, the government or Parliament decides that it would prefer a public inquiry, then of course we will support that. I don't have a strong view. I just say pragmatically, it takes a while, and it's not always satisfying to all those involved. But I understand why there's a call for it.